Hi and welcome to the Lightleaders, a podcast for lightworkers and conscious entrepreneurs who are passionate about raising the consciousness of our planet and take action to make it happen. I'm your host, Alexis Lember, and I believe that we are currently in the middle of a global awakening of humanity, that right now is the time for heart-centered conscious people to step into our power so we can replace the old paradigm and bring the conscious new earth into manifestation. So here, I'll interview a variety of people who lead this movement of creating this new earth, whether they do it through a meditation course, a conscious podcast, or an ethical cryptocurrency. I call them light leaders. If you resonate with our mission, please help us spread the message by sharing this podcast. We're having more and more content getting censored, so we need your help. Make sure to stay in touch also by registering to our newsletter on thelightleaders.org. If you hear little nuggets you love and you'd like to share, screenshot this episode and share on your Instagram stories, make sure to tag us at the Lightleaders podcast and we will repost. Hey, there's a project I'm super passionate about. It's called the Lightleaders Mastermind. We're looking for people who really want to create better systems for the new Earth and see blockchain, cryptocurrencies and decentralized technologies as a great way to do it. More concretely, we'll have a few mastermind events with top guest speakers, and we'll create a group of like-minded people to build those new foundations. We want people who are passionate about the values around sovereignty and freedom and who are also capable and solution-driven. So if that sounds like you, I invite you to get more information on thelightleaders.org/mastermind. We also have a free Telegram group that you'll find there where you can get more info. Hi and welcome to this new episode of The Lightleaders. Today we have a conversation with Michael Healy and Rieki Cordon. Michael Healy is co-founder of Unit Ventures, building, investing and powering token-driven projects. Michael got into digital tokens in 2010, was building the Android app for WikiLeaks and fundraising using Bitcoin when the government froze all bank accounts and donation portals. Rieki Cordon's purpose is to create a world worth passing off to his children. And this exploration started with permaculture and eco-villages and has led you, Rieki, to cryptocurrencies and regenerative economic systems. And the realization has led Rieki to focus on Seeds and Hypha, two organizations living in the Web3 and focused on decentralizing abundance and governance. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rieki, for being here. And I know the two of you have a lot of experience with cryptocurrencies, with new paradigm thinking, and also sometimes slightly different views. So I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. I've had Michael Healy twice on the Lightleaders podcast already. So if people want some background, they can listen to those two episodes. I've had Rieki once also, so you can listen to that episode before. Before we get started, I'll start with you, Rieki. What are you grateful for today?
Today I'm grateful for Bali. It's my last day here. So I was just up in Uber actually saying goodbye to some of our favorite restaurants. So I'm really grateful for Bali and how nourishing and welcoming and
Were you
the
at
abundance
Moxa?
she provides. We went to Moxa 3 times in the last 2 days. So Moxa's great. Just had a zest breakfast this morning. So yeah, really grateful for Bali. Thank you.
How are you, Michael?
I'm really grateful to be here. I think it's an amazing opportunity. Grateful for my family, my friends. Really excited how the world is moving towards something that's really exciting, and we have a strong and positive and optimistic future ahead. I think despite lots of people going through a really difficult, rough period at the moment, I do believe that in the near and long-term future, we've got a really exciting and positive journey ahead.
Yeah, it is. And there's a saying that the future doesn't arrive everyone at the same time. It drops in at certain places and then it ripples. And I do feel that here in Bali, a lot of that new paradigm is already here into manifestation. So yeah, that's an exciting place to be in for all of us. Not anymore for you soon, Rieki. But Costa Rica sounds pretty good too.
We gotta go decentralize the future,
So we'll talk about cryptos, we'll talk about decentralized governance, we'll talk about reducing wealth inequalities, we'll talk about tokens, and is it going towards mass adoption, and what makes a currency valuable, and maybe other things that might pop up, maybe special economic zones and new systems of sovereign nations even. Before we go into things that are more technical, I feel a lot of us, all of us here, we're into cryptos, into technology because of what it can bring to humanity and how it can better our lives. Otherwise, what's the point? So I'd like to have an idea from both of you of what the new us looks like, the new paradigm. Can you start, Rieki?
Oh, okay.
Like if you paint the picture.
Yeah. I have a hard time doing this because it's like painting a sunset, you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like until you get there. And I think that's really true of the future, because a big part of what I see the future being is it's a co-creation, it's a collaboration. So the most exciting part of the future is I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I have like one glimpse of it that I'm bringing to it. And, part of that glimpse is one where we have a lot more freedom of the fundamental systems we're part of. Like today, you're born into capitalism, and that's basically it. You don't really have a choice. Like you do if you want to literally like pack up your entire family and leave out of the country or something. But most countries are following the same system. So I know the future is offering more fundamental freedom for what type of economic systems, governance systems, how you want to contribute to a community, what community you want to be a part of. I see a future where there's a lot more eco-villages. We're kind of like cycling back to history where we're a lot in tribes and communities of solidarity, and then having those communities then federate globally. Because that's where I think the new spiraling comes from. Is tribes are isolated; they just did their own thing. There's an innovation in a tribe; it didn't really spread much unless that tribe ran into another one. So it had a very slow, spread. What I see now is that we could have those tribes, where we still have those solidarity communities, and we could bring back that thing that's missing. But then those tribes can federate and collaborate across the globe and create new types of, what excels beyond the nation state today. We'll have global communities that don't necessarily have physical boundaries. So that's kind of what I'm seeing is the future is going to have way more selection of what community, what country, what economic system and all that you want to be a part of. And that's what I think is cool with Web3 and this whole transition we see is it's providing those tools to do that. What does that actually look like? I have no idea. And that's the cool part. So that's kind of my piece.
How about you, Michael?
That's a great perspective. I totally agree with what Rieki mentioned. I think very specifically and concretely, I think it's one where, we've got a more cooperative economy. So it's not just the founders and the investors who benefit, but the customers and employees. So you mentioned some of your favorite restaurants. In this new earth or new economy, everyone would have a piece of it. So everyone really benefits from each other, supports one another. It has the attractions of socialism or communism, but without the lack of economic incentives. So really excited for everyone to be supporting one another, much more opportunities for each other. I think this new society is one where money is not a constraint, but it's really something that is supporting everyone. So kind of like how the internet has provided an abundance of information, the mobile phone has provided an abundance of communication. Now, value is something that's really restricts a lot of people. And I'm confident that in the next 3.5 years, this benefit of the token economy will support, a small minority of society, the early adopters, the innovators like ourselves. And then, in the next 7.5, 8 years, by the end of this decade, everyone in the world and, as you mentioned, the new earth would benefit from this exciting technology. And then once everyone has this abundance of value and money per se, then they're able to do whatever they want, whether it's build eco-villages, whether it's create art, whether it's do things which money would have previously been a constraint. So I'm really excited for this future, I think, an abundance of resources.
Do you align with this, Rieki?
Yeah, I love that. And just to build on something you said with, socialism versus capitalism, communism, all those isms that we've tried. I mean, they're all kind of broken. None of them really succeeded in bringing that paradise that they promised, right? So I think that's what's cool here is we're getting rid of all those dogmas, and we can pick and choose pieces of which ones worked. Like we can keep the market concept where it applies, and anyway, so I think that's a really cool element. But to really ground it about what I care about is I care about how we can use this technology to regenerate our planet. So I think any part of these economic systems that are detached from the well-being of our Earth are fundamentally broken. I mean, that's really what an economy should be anyway. It's about household management. That's where the word comes from. But our household right now is our planet. This is our Earth. And if our economy is not taking care of her and stewarding our planet, then it's failing as an economic system. So I think that's where we need to ground all of these experiments in, like how can we best care for our Earth, our home, and how do we manage that in the most effective way? Otherwise, what are we doing?
And that's a good point, because in the past decade, we've had a lot of economic growth, but that's also aligned with a lot of destruction for our planet.
Exactly.
Yeah. And economic growth is really not a bad thing. I guess it's the negative externalities. It's things like pollution in the air, pollution in the water, noise pollution. Slavery. So I think the solution is not to create more, build more. It's all about managing the negative externalities. And I think the solution isn't to stop businesses, tax more. The solution is not to prevent founders and investors from innovating. It's all about working towards providing less subsidies for oil and gas, providing less subsidies for sugar and people producing stuff which has bad externalities. And if we create a society where there's much more value and money for each other, then I think people will be able to make wiser decisions, whether it's taking care of their health or taking care of the planet. Just the issue is a lot of people are so constrained by, the economics that, if you blame them for not eating healthy, they can't afford, paying extra for healthy food. They just need to eat fast food. So I think if we can create an economy in a world where everyone is so financially taken care of, then they have more chance to work on their personal development, more chance to work in the environment, social issues, and much more. So we're not far away, I think.
So they can be higher in the Maslow's paradigm.
Most definitely.
Of needs.
Yeah, spot on.
And we talked a bit about money there. What in that new paradigm, what is money? How is it used? Do we have money even?
Sure. I think everyone's been in an abusive relationship with money for a long time. I think, money first came into the scene through empires wanting to coordinate militaries. So yes, that's where the original money came from. And they said, okay, we're going to create this trinket so that instead of having to send all the food and housing with our armies, we can send them with trinkets. And then we'll force people to accept this trinkets through taxes. Cool. Brilliant model. And boom, money was born. But what was the fundamental there? Like empires wanted to use money to coordinate, but they were using it to coordinate the expansion of empires. So people are being like on the losing end of this coordination scheme, right? So I think a lot of people look at money and think it's evil because they've been abused by it for so long. So I kind of look at it as magic. If humanity's created something that's magical, it's definitely money. And I think there's a possibility of kind of taking that black magic that it's been and turning it into white magic and using it to, coordinate, creating new worlds. So fundamentally, I look at money as a tool for coordination and for scaling trust. That's really what it always comes down to is, trust and faith. Like we accept gold because we trust. Well, we don't even have to trust. We can look at it. We can chew it. We've bent it. We weighed it. We're like, okay, it weighs this much. It's this much pure gold. Cool. That's how we scaled trust in this. And we knew that there was only so much gold and it was hard to get. Right now, we trust dollars because we trust the U.S. military will, enforce that's power and its might for so long. So people are like, yep, dollar's powerful because the U.S. military is powerful. So that's how it gets its trust. But I think there's other ways that we can create trust around a currency through, communities coming together, coming up with new forms to generate trust.
That's going to be a really interesting point too. How do we create that trust and value for money? But just before we jump into that, I'd love to know, what's your view on
most definitely. So I think, money is actually a huge positive thing to society. If you look at societies like Soviet Russia or, communist China, you look at Venezuela, societies where have been experiments of trying to get rid of money, have been, huge messes. Like you've got dictators or just, as you say, controlling people. I think, as what Rieki mentioned, money came about when people started exchanging, rice for goats, for cheese, for some plants and flowers or whatever. And then they realized, okay, these flowers are only going to last 3 days. Why don't I, give you all a bunch of flowers, and then you can give me a bunch of these gold coins. But then the issue with gold coins is, they're heavy, or gold bars, you got to carry them around. So, you started having these organizations called banks, which, you gave your gold bars or gold coins to, and they gave you a piece of paper, promising you that, when you gave that piece of paper out, you get that piece of gold. And, as Rieki mentioned, gold is super valuable or rare, so you can use it to change for other things. Then, you had nation states which realized that, okay, we want to create more economic growth. Let's remove the attachment of these pieces of paper to the piece of gold. Let's just print lots of paper. And it created lots of economic growth built on debt. And, the US dollar, the US government has led a lot of this growth. The way how other nation states, provide their credit worthiness in terms of how valuable, let's say, the Singapore dollar, the euro, the Japanese yen is, how much US dollars they hold.
Yeah. But then in the new paradigm, how does
that work? It's a great question. So I think what's going to happen is there's going to be millions of different currencies and coins. You're going to have a Rieki coin, you're going to have an Alex currency, I'm going to have a Michael currency. And all of us are, owning each other's currencies. We're all motivated to help each other succeed. It's backed by, what are the products and services that we're providing to society. And if Alex, you provide some amazing products and services, we're all going to benefit and thrive from your products and services. You're going to be able to take a small bit of marginal profit, which goes into backing up the Alex token. So if I felt that, wow, you're a great provider of products and services and benefit society, I'm going to want to hold some Alex token.
And that's something, we had a discussion a bit at the Lightleaders Mastermind on that at lunch. And that's something where you feel fundamentally those currencies, those tokens, they need to be backed by some kind of real value under it.
Absolutely.
Well, there could be the case also for new currencies that find other ways to get trust, right? I feel that was also your point, Rieki. Like, do you need to back your token when you think cryptocurrencies? Do you need to back a cryptocurrency with some real business, like with some revenue generating business?
Sure. I think it's kind of a both and future. We're going to have all of these things. But again, it's always trust. Some people are going to trust a currency that's backed by a revenue generating asset more than they trust a currency that's backed by code or backed by promises or whatever. So it's always going to be about how you go about generating trust. Some people might generate that trust leveraging existing trust. People already trust that land is valuable. So they're going to say, okay, I will leverage the trust of land to back this currency by land. But that's a cultural thing. Our cultural thinks that you can own land and back stuff by it. There's existing cultures today that if you sell them that concept of a currency backed by land, they'll be like, nobody owns this land. What does that mean? Like, oh no, I have to trust this nation state to enforce this, land ownership in order to claim the value of my token? Like, no, that doesn't mean anything to me. I don't trust that. So that community might say, no, land-backed money means absolutely nothing to us. So I think we're going to have that diversity, and each community is going to figure out their own way for creating, tokens backed by their own levels of trust. But then, of course, there's all sorts of different benefits from it. If you back your token by, an asset that could be productive, then that asset's not being productive. It's just being used to back that token. For example, if you're wanting to back your, my Rieki token by, $100,000, then that $100,000 is sitting in a bank to back my 100,000 Rieki tokens to $1. But that means I'm not spending those $100,000 to, do marketing or plant gardens or do something. So it's less productive that way, but it could build more trust, which could have other benefits. So it's always a pros and cons, and it's really dependent on what you're trying to accomplish. But I'm saying I don't think there's going to be one way to, go about this. Every community is going to have their own, which is the kind of the interesting part is the Cambrian explosion we're going through right now is we don't know what this future looks like. We don't know the most effective ways to do it. So we need to experiment. But what I'm just encouraging is us to experiment from first principles, which are, currency is about coordination and trust. How do we go about, scaling coordination and generating trust? And think from that perspective. And then we might come up with new cool ideas we can't even, consider right now, which I think is more part of the Renaissance. But anyway. long-winded, but that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, super well said. I mean, I guess if someone wasn't listening and they were thinking about, the Rieki token, the Alex token, the Michael token, and they didn't know us, personally, and they were trying to evaluate, which of these personal tokens are going to be worth anything in a year, or, if someone did some work for us and accepted, 100 Rieki tokens, 100 Alex, 100 Michael tokens, and they're thinking, okay, if I take some Alex token, or I take some Michael token, or Rieki token, am I just, getting something which when I try and get a bag of food, I can't get anything, so how do you assess this worthiness? You mentioned keeping it with land or with $100 in a bank account. The way we look at it is it's not possible to do that. You need to back it up by other digital assets, because otherwise it's not trust free. You still depend on someone managing a bank account and hopefully that money still being there, or that land is actually tied to the digital token. We think it's not possible to establish this relationship. We think the only way to establish it is, let's say if I was a software developer, which I am, if I provide, building a website for you, or building a blockchain for you, or building, do some work for you, I'm generating value for you. Now, with this value you're paying me, for my work, I'm going to use it to feed myself, to, let's say if I had staff, pay my staff, and then hopefully there's some surplus, and that is what goes into my treasury. That is what goes to backing up the token. Otherwise, if you're giving me some money, I don't even get the job done, and I spend all the money, there's going to be no surplus to go into my treasury, and there's going to be no, you're not going to hire me again. So really, it rewards me on providing good products and services and allows that to be a good indicator. And, referencing a lot of people in the crypto space, big tokens like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they say it's not necessary to have anything backing it up apart from trust. And I think a way to think about is similar to early stage internet companies. So people used to say internet companies didn't need to be backed up by anything. It's like special to the internet, or like Instagram when it came out, or like mobile apps. It said, hey, you don't need a business model. It's a mobile app. It's special. Apps make money. But then, soon enough, internet companies needed someone to pay the bills, or needed someone to, keep it sustainable. So they needed to integrate some level of business model economics. And then I guess, if it doesn't have a business model, it simply depends on new investors. Then it's called a Ponzi scheme. And the most famous Ponzi scheme, or one of the most famous ones, was after the 2008 financial crisis. So Bernie Madoff, he had Madoff Securities. He was the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, so a lot of trust. Everyone looked at him and it's like, he's a Jewish banker, very good investor. You give your money to him, it's completely safe. And the only reason it fell down like a house of cards is because his son, reported him, and he turned himself in and said, guys, I'm actually not investing your money. All I'm doing is taking new investor money and paying out older investor money. So we think of cryptocurrencies as, very young and very new, similar to that, in the sense that it's simply trusting that, I hope new investors come in, and then in the future, the tokens of cryptocurrencies which have an underlying engine, kind of like, Airbnb or Uber, they provide lots of value to society. They generate, a surplus of value, and that goes into backing up the currency. So it's more like shares than currencies. Yeah, and we're excited for that future.
Do you see a similar future, Rieki?
There's going to be lots of futures. So I 100% believe that future is going to exist.
Do you also think there'll be so many tokens?
I mean, there already are a lot of tokens. That's going to happen regardless of my opinions on whether or not it's good or not. So that's going to be there. But tokens, I mean, they all exist on network effects. So there's only going to be so few that actually survive and have any value going in the future based on those network effects. Like example, I could have a token, but if I don't put a lot of energy behind that token, then it's not really going to be worth anything. It's going to exist, sure, but no one's going to care that it exists. Anyway, I think all of that is great. There is one point I wanted to bring up, though, about the business models needing to exist. I think that's true if we get trapped in the revolution. So internet companies did have to figure out a business model because they were operating in capitalism. So they didn't change capitalism, right? I think if we use this technology to change the economic systems themselves, we don't have to follow those same rules to sustain ourselves. An economy only needs to sustain itself if it's providing for the people that are part of it. If it can help coordinate people to do things and they can meet their needs through it, then it doesn't need to follow the rules of capitalism then. All it needs to do is meet the needs of the people participating in it, and they continue to participate in it, and it has value. If a token, the whole point of people coming into it is just because it's paying them money back, and that's why they're there, then yeah, I mean, I think that's most of the crypto space and the Ponzi schemes. They're coming in because they want token to go up and they want to pull money back out, and they're denominating it all in dollars. Incredibly unsustainable, and I think all of those tokens need to kind of figure out a business model in order to keep promising that. But if you're not promising to just pay off investors more money, and that's not the reason people are coming into it, then the rules change. Now it just means it's got to meet the needs of the people part of that community. And as long as people are in that community, then it has trust, and then that trust can scale and they can coordinate and do things with it. Great. Then it's a coordination tool. And then that's where all the rules start changing, because that community can make whatever agreements they want. And then this technology is just here to mediate and facilitate those agreements. And that's where I'm a little bit more excited, and why the diversity is so important, because we're going to see a lot more of that, where communities can come together, come up with new agreements. 90% are going to fail for sure, as everything, in any type of evolution, like a lot of stuff's going to fail. But the stuff that succeeds, I think, is going to be, revolutionary, Renaissance worthy, more appropriately.
And there can be different steps in going to that new paradigm. One with
mandatory.
Some kind of capitalism that's more distributed and with less wealth inequality and maybe a bit better for the environment. And then a next step that is a totally new model.
Well, I think that's what's cool about the whole Web3 thing, is it is doing the next steps approach. I mean, for decades and decades, we've had, a resource-based economy, Venus Project, on and on. There's all these really cool ideas of if we could just press the reset button, we could do it better. But there is no reset button, and we're not just moving to Mars to do it better. We need to transition. So that's what was cool and still is cool about Web3, is it is transition. It's using the profit motive and capitalism, and it's kind of doing a jujitsu move kind of, and redirecting that. I mean, you mentioned, economic growth's not bad. I agree. And there's a lot of proponents out there saying, oh no, we need to degrowth. And they're also right, because growth in capitalism means the destruction of our planet. But growth in a new system doesn't have to be that way. It could be growth is tied to regeneration, in which case we need a lot of growth, because we have a lot of regeneration to do. We have a lot of rivers to clean up and forests to replant, and there's a lot of, regenerative growth that can happen. And if we redirect that economic drive of growth towards regenerative growth, fantastic. But right now, currently as it stands, growth is degenerative growth. We keep converting our forests into freaking feet of lumber. That's how we grow, So I think we need to have that kind of both and situation. If we reject growth and we try to resist it, I think we're going to fail, as everything that's tried to reject growth over the last decades have failed. So we got to say, okay, it's here. How do we redirect it? And that's what I think is cool about crypto, and why some people, probably a lot of people listening to this, are kind of rejecting it, because it does kind of feel like it's all about the money and growth and capitalism and those things that we kind of hate. But that's what's kind of cool about it, is it's redirecting that, and we can redirect that energy, that profit motive, that growth drive towards the things we care about and that we want to see happen in the world. So I think if we can get that right, then it could be magical. And that's kind of why I spend my time in it, even though
with seeds.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with many of these points. I guess one thing worth noting, you mentioned there's many tokens. There's not that many. There's maybe 8,000, and maybe a few hundred of them are active. In the future, there's going to be 8 billion. 7 billion people. Everyone will have their own personal token. And there's going to be tokens for communities. There's going to be tokens for every business. There's going to be tokens for every restaurant, spa, school, university. They're all going to have tokens. And what's going to back up the value of the token? It's going to be the amount of value that they provide to society. So if let's say you're doing something really amazing, which you are with Lightleaders community and podcast, two of us and hundreds of other people are going to give our hard-earned value, to you, because you're a good custodian of it. Now, if you take this hard-earned value and you mismanage it, then the Lightleaders token won't be able to grow as a resource, and then it just won't have a long-term future. Similar, people like to criticize businesses or criticize capitalism, but I've been to a few communist places. I'll give an example, like Cuba, and in a place like Cuba, where it promises this, everyone's going to be taken care of. There's going to be no reward for whether you work harder or less. Everyone just gets the same. We won't have beautiful chairs like this or amazing settings. There's no incentive to do more than others, because if let's say you worked really hard and the two of us were just lazing around doing nothing, you're going to be like, hey, I'm working so hard to provide for you too, and I don't receive anything for it. But I guess where capitalism gets a bit corrupted is where you're just working your entire life thinking that you just want more money and more value. And then you miss the whole point of, being present or like why do you want this money? So I'm excited for the post-capitalist society when, everyone just has so much money, so much value, so much access to resources because, let's say machines are producing stuff or, there's...
But in your model, what addresses the fact that economic growth doesn't come with, for example, more destruction of the planet?
Externalities? Absolutely, because creating less negative externalities actually is better. It makes more money. It sells more. People feel better. People talk about, hey, we should all use electric cars tomorrow. We should just turn off the grid and stop using electricity. But it's just not feasible at the moment. It will take a transition. It's kind of like newspapers. It went from print to online. Our society is currently one where it makes a lot of money to produce negative externalities. But in the very near future, when everyone has a lot more value and resources, there's still going to be this incredible growth and people are going to be provided, things are going to be cheaper, people are going to work less and less. But there will be no need to provide these negative externalities. So I think two main things for me, crypto solves really well. One is the flow of value. So, at the moment, if you wanted to pay Rieki or pay myself, or I paid, everyone here, or Rieki pays some his friend, banks and governments restrict this a lot. So it's kind of like, imagine you want to go from here to the other side of the street, and every step you take, someone's blocking you. It just doesn't flow. So I'm talking about and
we talked about it in the podcast with interoperability.
Venture capitalists, banks, governments, they don't make it easy to flow. Second thing is the distribution of resources. So at the moment, if let's say the two of us worked for you, and you became an overwhelming success, you just paid us a wage to kind of survive. And then let's say if you decide to sell the business and whoever buys it fires the two of us, we need to find a new job to kind of survive. Even though we helped build this thing, which is widely successful, we didn't benefit from it. And the cool thing about tokens, if you look at Uber, 2 million of its drivers would have benefited from the $80 billion capitalistic success. And everyone's happy because everyone got a place to drive, to ride, and it created an extremely valuable capital efficient resource. But if Uber was a very bad service, where none of its drivers used it, it says, guys, we don't take a profit. We're not, a capitalistic business. Nobody gets rides. Nobody gets to drive anyone around, and there's no surplus. So profit is really not a bad thing. It's just, as you mentioned, was at the expense of negative externalities like destructing the environment. We do want more profitable things, where the profit is shared and distributed. So I'm excited for that future.
And do you feel that the tokens would be enough for that? I mean, maybe because Rieki what I feel when I listen to you is like, yes, that's beautiful. And there might be something missing there to make sure it doesn't, I feel like there could be even more of that growth and redistribution, but it could still harm the planet, for example. If there's not, for example, with seeds, you design especially incentives that are very intentional around it.
I mean, that is mandatory, I think, to really address this, because tokens in and of themselves, they just make it easier. I mean, as any advanced technology, like, nuclear power, it can generate electricity, but we can also destroy entire cities with it. Tokens do the same thing. They just make it easier to move value, which could also mean it's easier to concentrate wealth, which we also see happening.
I had Sim on the podcast who talks about the new banking system using digital bank, like central banks, CBDCs.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also a threat with this.
I mean, 100%, yeah. So central bank digital currencies, even if they made a public ledger, all it means is they can track everything, they have more control over it, so there is that dark side of tokenization too. I think that's, mindful to be aware of. But what's cool about a token though is it's programmable. So it could be programmed for evil or it could be programmed for good, but it gives you that ability to program it. Why, a dollar itself can't be programmed. So you can't change the fundamental behavior of me giving you a dollar. That's just it. That's the only agreement. But when you can program a token, you can change that agreement. If every time I give it to you, maybe 10% goes to this, charity or whatever. Lame example, but you can change the fundamental programs.
And are you excited about a future where you have a token, Michael has a token, and there's 8 billion token, every corporation, people have their token? Do you think it's a good thing?
I mean, I don't know. It's not something I've explored too much, but I mean, we kind of already have that with shares. So if any company has any way of, distributing ownership, a token's a great way of doing that. So I do see every business having a token, every community having a token. And those tokens are like contribution tokens. It's saying like who's contributed to this business, you know, and that's a way of better distributing shares, like you were talking about with the Uber example. The reason that, you know, those Web 2 companies didn't do that is it's as far as legally concerned, it's tedious and impossible. Yeah. Anytime you want to do a share distribution, you got to have like all sorts of paperwork happen. Once you go public, it's even harder. So it's like, yeah, right, that's not happening. But if your shares are tokenized, it becomes really freaking easy to make sure that everyone who's touching your business gets a token. So I see, everything that's a business in this world, I see all of that tokenizing. All the traditional assets, I think. But
are you, because I kind of felt you said your answer would be a good thing, that you were not that excited about it.
That in and of itself isn't going to create a regenerative world. That's interesting, okay. It's happening. But tokenizing everything on its own won't heal the planet because we still need to change the underlying behavior of what those tokens are doing, how they're behaving. You know, how did we redirect incentives towards regeneration? Yeah, you know, all this could do is redirect incentives towards, you know, making degeneration quicker, which it could do. So that's what I was saying. That on its own isn't going to solve the problem. There's more complex things that need to happen. And that's where I spend all my time. So that's why I made that comment. I'm not saying let's try to resist that. But I did make that comment with, you know, NFTs. That's something I'm kind of like, with is there's one energy there about let's make things that were once abundant and free scarce. Let's try to introduce artificial scarcity into the future because that's what creates value. I'm like, okay, I think it's less interesting to make every artist an NFT so that artists could get paid. I think it's way more interesting if artists had a universal basic income and they're making art because they fucking love making art and that's what they're doing, you know, and then their art could still be free because it is. There are some interesting things happening with it, but mostly NFTs are about kind of exacerbating capitalism. How can we have more, you know, exclusive and artificial ownership of stuff? Like, you know, I want people to know I'm rich, so I have something that, you know, shows that off. Like, I see a lot of that energy there, and it's just not interesting to me. So that's what's happening in crypto. Is it's two very strong different camps. Ones that are like exacerbating all of the problems that we're having, and the other side that could be a potential solution. And that's just what I want to bring up is like crypto in itself is not a savior, you know, but it could bring us there, but it could also bring us to wild, crazy dystopian places too. So, and I think all of that's going to happen. That's my point. Like, you know, all of this is going to exist. But it's the own little containers that we operate in that's going to determine, you know, our future. I know that's super abstract, but I'll probably stay there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's super clear to me how tokens and cryptocurrencies and digital assets are the savior. You know, it's really just, you know, an access to resources. You know, a lot of people, they wouldn't be, you know, disrupting their villages, you know, or buying, you know, eating fast food if it wasn't an economically viable thing to do. A lot of people, you know, would prefer to be making art all day, you know, if it was the if the economics wasn't a thing. So I think...
Well, I mean, you take fast food, you could eat way healthier for the same price, for example.
You could, but I guess... for a lot of people, you know, eating healthy, you know, they don't have the knowledge all the time, even the mental bandwidth, they don't even want to think about it.
Like with a token, I could do my whole company and destroy the planet and raise a lot of money with a token, and a lot of people make a lot of money. That doesn't solve this.
Well, in that case, then, you know, other people would make another token which combats that, you know. So I think the cool thing about this is just the enabler. So it's kind of like, you know, you could say, like you mentioned before, the shares being tokenized, but that's like imagine you run a newspaper and it's like taking a picture of your newspaper and putting it on the internet, you know. But as you can see, that's not what the newspapers did, or that's not how news is, you know, transmitted. It's like a new entire form. So I don't think shares will become tokenized. I think tokens are going to be the parent of shares and companies and really replace this current economic system. And I think once people have, you know, an abundance of value, like you mentioned going to all of these favorite restaurants, you know, if these restaurants were, you know, not being able to pay for its staff or ingredients or, you know, be run like a business, you know, then it wouldn't be it wouldn't be able to structurally operate, you know. And people talk about universal basic income, but when you create money or print money, you can't just... It needs to come from somewhere, you know. It's like when the government, you know, prints out, you know, issues X amount of dollars, you know, it's effectively diluting everyone. So everyone is you know, effectively having their money worth less. You know, what you need is an increase in production. You need, you know, maybe robots, you know, driving cars, you know, so that people don't need to drive the cars. They can get paid for the value that the robots are creating by driving the cars.
Yeah, I mean, that basic income and like creating new money doesn't increase the value
created,
but still redistributes it.
It does, but the thing I worry about universal basic income is it's a very easy fix. It's kind of like say, hey, let's not care about where the value comes from. It's like communism. It's like, let's just pay everyone an equal wage and hope that the economy will fix itself. Like a really nice analogy I like to think about is centrally planned system. So if there's one cryptocurrency in the world and it's like the Earth dollar, which is like, oh my gosh, we're going to save the planet. This is a dollar which is regenerative. It's very hard to get one such system to work. You need like maybe 1 million different Earth dollars or tens of millions. And then the market is going to allow the best one to succeed. Similar to, if you think about the Sydney, Sydney has about 4.5 million people. If let's say you were in charge of feeding 4.5 million people every morning, you need to get maybe, 200,000 chefs cooking 20 meals every day. And every day you'll be like, oh my gosh, Wiki, how are we going to serve 4.5 million breakfast, 4.5 million lunch, 4.5 million dinner? It would be very hard to organize something like that. But every day, 4.5 million people, they get breakfast, they get lunch, a lot of them get dinner, but that's done in a distributed way. So the cool thing I like about tokens is it just provides that opportunity for people to fail and succeed and to make mistakes and to experiment. And let's say we do have lots of different cryptocurrencies. Like, how do you tell which ones are, a bit scammy, which ones are, like you said, Ponzi schemes, or, just depending on people buying and pumping it up and dumping it. And the ones which are actually, things like Uber or Airbnb or let's say you're a really talented chef and we enjoy your food so much. So
we're going back on the conversation now on what creates value for a token.
Absolutely.
And
which is the treasury. And it's a very new concept, but I'm very confident that we're not going to see it be the norm this bull market. So it's not going to be we're going to start to see it the next bull market, but at the next crypto craze, not in 3 years, but in 5 years' times, every single coin will have a treasury.
Okay.
And that treasury.
I think where you are, just because we talked about it already at the beginning, I think definitely. Where, if I agree please. Where I understand is you think those tokens will need a treasury.
100%.
Well, you think it's only one way to create trust. And yes, treasury is one, but there are other ways without treasury. Is that good understanding of where you stand on the value of
potentially? I mean, tokens? Like for instance, I had a conversation, I had a drink with the co-founder of Ethereum last year, one of the founders. He wrote all the code for it, Gavin Wood. And I told him, hey, Gavin, isn't it exciting that there's going to be millions of different currencies in the future? And he said, it's unlikely. So a lot of people, it's unlikely because a lot of people, the moment they get some tokens or shares, they're just going to sell it, to convert it back to dollars. And I think a lot of people in the space, they just don't see this future yet because it's very new, it's very dystopian.
Even Gavin Wood.
Right, which is kind of wild. It's like the person who built Ethereum and built, Polkadot, which is the evolution of Ethereum and Bitcoin, whatever. It doesn't see this future yet, but I'm confident that, at the end of this decade, there's just going to be millions of tokens. You're going to hold some Michael, some Rieki, some of the gentlemen who are organizing this. And we're just going to be so motivated to help and support one another that we're just not going to care about the monetary aspect. Similar to, like, if you were in let's say, Italy and he was in Canada and I was in, South Africa and we were calling one another before, it used to cost $2 a minute, and it needs to be very expensive. Now we don't think about the cost. So really the money piece is going to disappear with millions of tokens. But we need a trustless way of seeing how valuable each token is.
That's the pure idea because there's a lot here. I mean, we talked about basic income.
Most definitely.
I'm surprised that you don't like it so much because that's a way also to get people higher on the Maslow's pyramid.
Yeah.
Basic income and value of token. What makes the value of token beyond treasury? Is there something that you want to react on?
Yeah, there's actually. So I can give one example of a model. So you mentioned like where does value actually come from in an economy? Cool. So if you have a currency that's running an economy, let's use dollars.
Sure.
Okay, you don't have inflation if you're making new dollars if it's met with new economic growth. So if the economy grows by 5%, the dollar supply grows by 5%, zero inflation. There's only inflation if the dollar supply is increasing further than economic demand for the dollar. All right, that's where inflation, the loss of the dollar value comes from. All right, so you can have value created if the economy is growing, or if more goods and services are happening, or if there's more innovation, if machines are creating more value. Like all of this creates more value in an economy. And that's how a currency that if it's governed by a community could have a universal basic income. They could say, okay, our economy grew by 5%. We're going to create 5% new of dollars. And this 5% is going to be distributed out to everyone equally as a UBI. That doesn't take any value from anyone. That just keeps their dollar stable and then gives everyone out that dollar. It does take away their potential increase of that token or the dollar's value, which is what Bitcoin is seeing. Like as Bitcoin economic demand for it grows, the token goes up in value. But they could instead say, okay, if new economic demand for Bitcoin's coming in, we'll create new Bitcoins and then give that Bitcoin out to a bunch of things. And that's where it gets really interesting with creating a new token for a new economic system. Is then you could say, okay, let's track your economy. If our economy is growing or shrinking, we're either increasing or decreasing our token supply. But if it's a new economy, it's got a lot of growth because it's growing to replace dollars or euros or whatever. And the whole way through this growth, where are you spending this new currency? So when you're creating new tokens, where is it going out to? In Bitcoin right now, they create $10 billion worth of Bitcoin to pay electricity fees. And then the other $7 billion that's created every year goes to profit for miners. So it spends $17 billion on security every year. That's the entire economic surplus of Bitcoin goes towards its security costs. That 7 billion or 17 billion rather could have gone towards marketing for Bitcoin, paying people for actually using Bitcoin, any number of things. Like Bitcoin could have used that money more effectively than in security. But that's the reason people are behind Bitcoin, because security. But this is where you get into like regenerative economies. It's like, okay, if we're growing our economy, how are we spending this new currency? We could then set up incentives for businesses to be regenerative. We could say, okay, if you are more regenerative, if you're paying people a better wage, if you're reaching these markers on this regenerative score, taking care of people and planet, we're going to give you more of this new currency. The exact same thing could be happening with central banks today. They created trillions of dollars recently. They could have said this money goes out to people who are healing our planet. They could have done that. But in 1 year, they spent $5.9 trillion subsidizing oil and gas. They could have spent $5.9 trillion subsidizing regenerative agriculture. Cool. So this is what the new tokens can do, is you could then program the token to say, if you're using this new one, then you're agreeing to what's being subsidized by the token. When you're using dollars, you're agreeing to warfare. You're agreeing to subsidizing oil and gas. But you could then use alternative tokens that are subsidizing other things, paying for other things to happen.
Okay, so it's having maybe a basic income, but that comes from the increase in growth rather than taking from...
I don't necessarily like the concept of universal basic income yet. I just don't think it's all that great. I instead prefer like a universal earned income, where you're tracking contributions, and they could be contributions to people, planet, society, all of it. And then you're giving people the rewards of the economic surplus based on that. Because then you get rid of the tragedy of the commons component, where people are just siphoning value and taking it and leaving. You say, no, if you're an active participant in the system, we're going to take care of you. And that's every community throughout all of history. Like no tribe had basic income. They said, if you're a contributing member to this tribe, you're going to stay here. If you're not, we're going to literally kick you out. You're going to be on your own. You're going to die. That was kind of how it worked. I think that's, it's a little aggressive. Though we still need something similar. We can't say like everyone's just going to get money, because that's not going to work. People are going to extract money and leave, and it doesn't work. A lot of UBI crypto things have started and failed, gone nowhere.
It is at a community level. Then if it's really universal and worldwide.
Yeah, I think villages can do it, but I'm way less excited about a village doing a basic income with a token. I'm way more excited about a village just having a free food forest, trying to provide free housing for its members. Like, let's have our basic income by basic access to your needs. Not basic currency coming in so you could buy your needs. Like, let's just provide those things on a village level, But I don't think a token out there just throwing tokens at people is going to do anything.
Okay.
But I do think a token that's, redistributing the wealth of that economy in a more intelligent and practical way, like, that makes a lot of sense. Again, what if Bitcoin was more smart about its $17 billion? Like, that's a lot of money it could have been paying programmers this whole time. And that's why, last piece, and I'll shut up about this, but that's why there's so many forks and new tokens, because Bitcoin didn't have a way of paying people to develop it. It was way more profitable for someone to come out, set up their own token, launch their own thing, even if it's literally a fork of Bitcoin, than it was to work for Bitcoin, because they couldn't work for Bitcoin. And all it did is, if they made some really awesome code for Bitcoin and that doubled the value of Bitcoin, Bitcoin couldn't pay them for that. And instead, they just doubled the value of all the people currently holding Bitcoin, which might not even have been them. So it didn't align the incentives for people to develop Bitcoin, to market it, to grow it. Like, it didn't necessarily work out. So this is where I think is a really interesting evolution in blockchains, is we can be intelligent in how we distribute the surplus of our economies.
And I feel that will come a lot with better decentralized governance too, which is another really interesting topic when we come to that, and obviously linked to it. I think it'd be, I'll let you rebound on that, but I think I'd love to go also to tie it up to, okay, how do we make these rules also, and what are good systems to create this?
So I think Bitcoin actually is a huge success, considering how far it's come, how far it's going to go in the future. It's come a long way. And I think, the way Bitcoin is kept secure is actually really good, because now you don't depend on a government, or you don't depend on a person. It's very decentralized or distributed. Arguably, it could be more, environmental and decentralized and distributed with some like proof of stake, instead of proof of work, which is what Bitcoin is. I do think though that, you said, if you do 5% of economic growth, you've got 5% that you can print, and you can choose where you want to you distribute it. But, even if you have a vote on where you should distribute this 5%, you have one person to decide, or a council, or we all vote on how this 5% gets distributed, that is effectively how governments are supposed to operate, and it always ends up being corrupt. So instead of, saying let's print out 5% or create some money, which is like, whatever, let's maybe not print any new one. And as you say, the people that provide lots of value by setting up businesses, by setting up, communities, helping people provide, products and service, whatever, they can decide with this currency, or like how the market system works, on where they think is the best to benefit society. So I think if the US dollar, there was a fixed amount of US dollars, there was no more to be issued. And then, as economic growth happens, instead of the US dollar or euro or whatever, it becomes worth less and less over time because of mismanagement by government, it actually became worth more over time. Then someone working minimum wage, they can keep some of their minimum wage, and that minimum wage is going to be worth more. And that's how we're going to get society to thrive. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to have lots and lots of small experiments. Many will become okay. A few will fail. I think we're much more likely to succeed with tokens than with shares or with, previous economic systems. But, so many are going to thrive. And then, it's going to really accelerate the way by which people support one another, and create this post-capitalist society where there is so much value flowing around, not because, people have utopian dreams or vision, but because people are, rewarded for working hard. And then when they work hard, they can choose how they're going to allocate resources. I don't really agree with the point of, hey, let's set up a council, or let's, come up with some sort of governance. I think governance should be decentralized and as apolitical as possible. So,
but it could be a decentralized government that vote for this project.
Very difficult though, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So the moment there is any central fund, even it always gets corrupted. So the way I like to think about it is if you had no central fund which is doing good, then you always end up with individuals being able to choose how to do good. And if everyone's sort of provided this basic level of wealth and opportunity, then they can do what's best for themselves and for everyone. And then I do believe that people are going to do things which, take care of the planet and do good, because it doesn't make sense for them not to. Yeah.
That was a lot. But, just a quick retort. There's three things. One is, tokens can be a lot of things. So I don't think it necessarily makes sense comparing like equity-like tokens versus currency-like tokens. For example, a fixed supply currency system will never make a good economic system. Because if I have a currency that's appreciating in value, then, for example, taking out a loan in Bitcoin for my house. If I took out a 30-year loan 10 years ago in Bitcoin, I would never be able to pay back my house.
So you calculate it in dollars, I suppose.
Say again?
You calculate it in the non-appreciating part. So you pay, you effectively, if you took out a loan, let's say of let's say 100 Bitcoin, when Bitcoin was at $1, you took, not for a house, but you took a loan of 100 Bitcoin when it was $1, and then you needed to pay back your loan $100. Now, if Bitcoin goes up, 100 times, you only need to pay one Bitcoin for the loan.
Right, but you see what you did there. You kept using dollars. So dollars is that token that looks and acts like a currency. Right? Bitcoin is that token that looks and acts like an asset. Right?
But it's really the same thing. It's kind of like...
Well, it's not, because if your Bitcoin is becoming more and more valuable, it is not a unit of account. It's not something you price things in anymore.
Because in this world, there's no dollars, for example. So you can't
there is no dollars, but you still have a way of tracking value in a sense. In the
Right.
sense,
So in order to do that, you need something relative. You need something to counter that.
it's something relative which doesn't change. So a lot of
Like
people,
a basket of goods.
but a basket of goods, but even a basket of goods, they change in value. You know, like a dollar today is going to be a dollar tomorrow. A Bitcoin today might not be a Bitcoin tomorrow.
Nothing changes in value on its own. A basket of goods changes in values relative to something else.
It's true.
Like a dollar.
Yeah.
So that dollar, that
Yeah.
other thing that's the relative to, is going to be another token.
Yeah.
So that token is going to be, even if it's just a stable token index, like whatever, that's still a token. And then tokens could be created that have the exact same value as that basket of good index or whatever.
I totally agree. So it's kind of like temperature. So temperature, you've got Celsius, you've got Fahrenheit. You know, the how hot or cold something is doesn't change. It's just a way of measuring it. The cool thing about using dollars is, you know, someone said $100 10 years ago. You know, if they kept this $100, it will still be $100 now. You know, if you kept 100,
But it's not the same value.
It's not, but at least it's a way of determining value. So I believe
I do think, for example, that an apple 10 years ago has roughly the same value, more or less, as an apple now. With $100, I feel it's way off. So even in tracking value, I think dollars actually really bad at that. I mean,
but you see, the price of the apple might have dropped a lot because, you know, now there's, you know, so many more efficient ways of, or healthy ways of, you know, creating apples, and the supply chain has improved. So now the price of an apple has gone from, you know, $1, let's say 50 years ago, to 10 cents now, you know, and it's great because, you know, now the price of an apple is now much more affordable, much more people have access. So I do believe that, you know, US dollars are going to disappear. But I think as a way of using it as a peg, you know, it works really well, a way to track it. So if you went like, okay, I bought some Alex tokens or some Lightleaders tokens, it's now worth, you know, how many Bitcoin? Bitcoin isn't very stable. And then you have to think, okay, how many Bitcoin is in US dollars? So it's a nice base layer. So it's kind of like, you know, we could speak, you know, he could speak French, you could speak German, I could speak, you know, Italian, you know, and we can't communicate with one another. But if we all spoke English, you know, that is a good way of communicating. You know, so I think, you know, the US dollar isn't great, but the interesting thing is that almost everyone in the world is willing to accept it. You know, it's really sad that, as you mentioned, it gets used to, you know, fund lots of really bad things. But, you know, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see super hyperinflation, you know, in the sense that, you know, $100 or $1,000 might get you an apple, you know, and you won't want to keep US dollars, you won't hold on to it, but at least you know that, okay, you know, this is a way of different people to assess how valuable something is.
okay, but I think that's why we think the dollar isn't such a great metric of value.
Well, right, which is why I'm suggesting we would make currencies to replace the dollar. We can use that tokens to do that. And then we can program them to be more stable. So instead of having inflation or deflation, like a fixed asset, you can have a steady state currency, which then can be used to price your goods and services and whatever in, and actually hold value over time. But in order to do that, you need to have, you know, a dynamic supply. If your economy is dynamic, it only works like if our economy is going to be fixed. It's never going to grow anymore. Then sure, you can have a fixed supply currency because the economy is exactly stable. Like no more people are going to be born. There's going to be no more demand. We're not growing anymore. We're fixed. Cool. Then a fixed supply currency makes sense into this context. But if your economy is growing, if there are going to be more people, if you're going to have more demand for this currency, you need to have a, you know, dynamic supply currency in order to have a steady state economy and to mediate those exchanges in a way that's not extracting value from one person and giving it to another. You know, inflation extracts value from everyone who's not investing their money and gives it to people who are investing it. So if you're working for wages, you're getting poorer and poorer every year. Deflation extracts value from everyone who's working for their money to everyone who's holding on to their currency. So deflation works to make the Winklevoss twins, you know, more and more billions, because every time the dollar, you know, Bitcoin goes up $1, they're going to make, you know, $1 million of value because of all the tokens they hold. So both of them concentrate wealth. They just do it in different ways. So if you want, you know, an economy that's not focused on concentrating wealth, you can't have deflation or inflation. You need to have a steady state currency.
I think deflation actually benefits everyone because, you know, if everyone is incentivized not to spend money because, you know, they need to invest it because it's going to be worth less, you know, or spend it because it's going to be worth less, then it incentivizes more saving. And saving is actually a very good thing. You know, so is the Winklevoss twins benefits, you know, rightfully so, because they, you know, supported this project, which did really well. And they, instead of spending it, you know, on buying a house or a car or whatever thing, they thought, okay, I'm going to keep this value. So I'm really confident that, you know, we're going to end up in a society which is deflationary. you know, and then someone who has their savings doesn't need to think, okay, how do I invest this money? They just need to hold it and know it's going to go for.
And I don't want to go too much into things that are specifics and into the economics.
Absolutely.
So I think for the token and more value parts, we can keep it there. I'd love to have a little bit of your ideas on how in that crypto world, a new paradigm, we can effectively decentralize organization, and also how that looks like it's leading to these eco-villages, communities that that can decentralize their governance, and also live in a world where you can choose more opt-in what rules you're part of, what communities you're part of, what tax you want to pay, if you want a basic income or not, and having more sovereignty in what systems we choose. Big topic too.
Yeah. This one probably deserves its own kind of hour, but I can lay the landscape a little bit. Bitcoin was one of the first DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Why it's autonomous is it doesn't have like, hey, we have a proposal, let's vote on it. Instead, it said these are the protocols of the ecosystem, and this is how you can make money by participating in it. So it just aligned incentives and pressed play. So it was autonomous. It didn't actually require any humans coming in there and voting to make something happen. There's no central treasury. People just then, through incentives, align themselves to start, setting up mining rigs across the globe. Awesome. So that's, one example of autonomous governance that I think is really cool, is putting in protocols into the base layer. So you could do other things. Bitcoin said our incentive was set up miners, mine Bitcoin. You could have other incentives that you program right into it. So you're pointing out, infinite power infinitely corrupts, totally agree. But you don't need to have, one central treasury where 5% of the inflation sits in that and then people just vote on how to spend it. Instead, you could say, actually, 1% is going to be reserved for using satellite data to prove regeneration and then literally giving people money based off that regeneration. Cool, protocol. We're going to look at satellite data. We're going to track regeneration. Areas that are regenerating, we're just going to give them more money. That's the game. Play the game. We press play, then people just self-organize around now regenerating their communities to earn some of this new token. So it's the same thing that Bitcoin did to self-organize around, setting up miners to burn electricity, and you can have other protocols following that same principle. And that's decentralized governance and one of its forms. But I think they're going to have a mixed form where we are going to have, direct democracy happening as well, where some of the tokens or some of the protocols.
Just to clarify on that other form, that other form, it's like instead of saying, okay, people vote on something in a decentralized way, it's setting up rule and letting whoever wants to participate in join, and that's another way of decentralized governance. That's not voting, that's people joining the things they're attracted to.
Yes, and they're still voting in Bitcoin. Miners vote by which chain that they're, this is a little bit more complicated, but what chain they're producing blocks on. So they are voting in that sense. And it's
they are voting
vote
on the Bitcoin, but then if they really disagree, they kind of vote in a way by maybe joining another project or forking.
Sure. Totally. Or they can, exactly. A fork is changing the protocol.
But that's why I think it's interesting. Because at first in my head, decentralized governance, I thought people vote, but the natural flow of people being attracted to this or that project is also in a way a decentralized governance.
Yeah. Well, I use Bitcoin because people think, Bitcoin doesn't have decentralized governance. So I wanted to point out that it actually does. It's just not as clear as, that's my representative and this is my vote on this particular issue. It doesn't have that tangible form, but it is still decentrally governed.
Okay.
But I think there's many layers. That's the founding layer, is you can have an autonomous protocol aligning incentives to do stuff, Bitcoin. And then on top of that, you can build in treasuries where you do have direct governance. What Bitcoin's lacking is it doesn't have a process to be able to take in community wisdom and evolve the protocol. Anytime that happened in the past, it forked it and broke it in half because they couldn't come up with a decision because there was no process to come up with a decision to evolve it. So you got Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Diamond and Bitcoin Satoshi Vision and all this stuff, right? That's because a section of the community said, hey, let's evolve it. They couldn't come up with a solution, so they just broke it in half, and that kept happening. So that was, I think, lacking in Bitcoin, and that's what's happening the last decade, is processes to be able to mitigate that problem. And instead, you can say, okay, our protocol can evolve, and we can, pull the wisdom of the entire community, not just the technical people who are miners. Like, it's not just their opinion that matters anymore. People who are using Bitcoin should be able to vote too, but there's no way for them to vote. Only miners get a vote with Bitcoin, right? And exchanges do too. It's in another way. So that's where, the second layer of decentralized governance comes in, is we can upgrade the protocol. So now we can say, oh, cool, well, let's use satellite data to give people for, regenerating their community. Let's give them some of this inflation. But let's also give seed banks for collecting seeds. Let's give them money. That's a cool idea. Yeah, let's put that up as a proposal. Yeah, let's change the protocol to do this. Proposal initiated. Put it up there, and then people vote on that directly. If that passes, then the protocol could evolve to now have that part of its autonomous, incentive generation engine, right? So that's one way of evolving it. And then on top of that, sure, you could also have a treasury that's sitting on some money for more of the granular stuff. There's other ways you can vote. Something we're experimenting in with seeds is, we call it gratitude. So this is another two-way of framing governance. There's like collective governance, which is polling everyone to try to come up with one decision. Should we change the protocol, yes or no? We have to have yes or no. So it's like collective intelligence. But I think there's also like crowd wisdom, kind of like bees and ants, where there's a million micro decisions that could be made, and you don't actually have to make one decision. And what we do with this is we say, okay, we have a pool of money, we need to figure out how to distribute it. But we're not going to distribute it by, one proposal coming in and saying, let's do it. Let's give everyone, 100 gratitude tokens for them to give out each cycle. So everyone can give gratitude and distribute out through the whole system. And then at the end of it, we see where all the gratitude went, and then we send them some of this pool of money onto all those gratitude flows. So that's using crowd intelligence to direct the flows of value. And these are different just experiments that we're playing on right now in decentralized governance, because it's a whole new space. And I think it's going to look a lot cooler than, this is my president, they make all the decisions, I think it's way better for us to be able to find new ways of polling collective intelligence and using that to evolve protocols that are atomic and automatic, and then also govern treasuries in a micro way. But having all of it, I think all of it can exist in one sandbox, and for us to trial it all out and use it to do cool stuff. That was a lot, but anyway, there's an idea.
No, it's a great point. I think the experiment you just described is like a business, or it's an idea. And I think how do we tell if the idea is successful or unsuccessful? If we don't have a treasury, to determine how much value it created, then everyone, I can say it was a huge success, you can say it's a huge failure, and then you created it and you're like, I'm going to side with Michael because I think it's a huge success because it favors me, right? If we don't have a non-biased way of determining how valuable it is, then it's very hard, because then multiple people could do something, and then you can't tell, hey, which one did create more value for society. And then I guess you made an interesting point about Bitcoin not being able to govern or make decisions or adjust, improve, that. I think it's actually not a problem. I think it's a feature. So I think it's a really strong feature because it's consistent. The problem with Ethereum now is people talk about decentralization, but it's not really decentralized. It's the Ethereum Foundation thinking, hey, we're going to upgrade the blockchain. When we finish building it, we're going to do a hard fork and create Ethereum too. So it's kind of like, you talk about decentralization, but you can think of Ethereum as effectively a business or a company, and they want to upgrade their system. So they decide, let's upgrade the system, So I think really the best way to have decentralization is to have as little politics or as few decisions made as possible. So it's kind of like, if we played a game of chess, let's say, or a 3-player game or a card game, we all agree on the rules. We can't go like, hey, let's create a new rule, let's vote on this new rule. And if let's say the two of us want this rule, you don't, then it's like, sorry, you got to play this game too. You should be able to say, I'm going to create my own game with this new amendment. And then if people like this new rule, they can jump across to play that game, because, and I think we're going to have...
So in your opinion, instead of creating a project or a crypto that's built to evolve, because the world evolves, so then and there's new technology. So I think that's why some project, they build that decentralized governance, because they want to be fluid also and evolve. You'd say rather than that, each project could be maybe more set in stone, and then with the world evolving, you create a new project.
Absolutely, because then it's consistent. Because it's kind of like, imagine, you told us we're signing up for this, and then we go to it and you're like, guys, what you signed up for is great, but I've got a new idea. And we're like, hey, I thought you told us it was going to be this. We think, we're confident that, in the future, if you signed us up for something, we participated in your movement, it's very clear that this movement can't change, or, as you said, the code, is very fixed in stone. We know what we're signing up for.
But maybe I want to sign up for a project that has evolution, because I see the benefits of it.
Okay, then if there's that ambiguity, then that's not set in stone. But at least let us know what you are like, things that we know are not going to be subject to your will or decision, because then that's centralized amongst you. You know, so the cool thing about Bitcoin is it hasn't changed. You know, Vitalik wanted smart contracts. You know, he couldn't get it. You know, that was not what it was meant to do. So what did he do? He created Ethereum. Ethereum became widely successful. Now, you know, something like Polkadot wants, you know, not just one single general purpose smart contract platform. It wants you to build your own smart contract platform. You know, instead of, you know, Gavin wasn't able to do that within Ethereum, he created his own system, Polkadot, to build, you know, build your own smart contract system.
I think it's great that you can build the new.
Yeah.
But I feel it's great for some project to be able to evolve without creating something totally different.
But the problem with that, though, is then it becomes centralized in its evolution. You know, and if you could say, hey, you know, we'll do a vote, we'll decide, okay, should we do this or that? You know, but then the problem is it becomes like government. You know, like government is not actually evil. You know, it's really trying to do good, but then it ends up being evil. You know, because it's like Google. You know, Google's motto was "Don't be evil." You know, and then they say, oh, you know, we want to make profit, we want to, you know, we're helping so many people. Then, you know, it became evil, right?
But just on this, I'm interested because Rieki, I feel what attracts someone like me to Seeds, for example, is I feel you've created an ecosystem that's an ecosystem, and an ecosystem, it lives and it grows and it evolves. So what do you feel about what Michael shared?
I don't think it's binary necessarily. I think everything exists on a continuum. So in this case, as a ecosystem's immature, it can change pretty rapidly. It's probably good for it too. But as it gets more mature, it does need to slow down in how much it's changing, because once, you know, millions of people are depending on this economic system for their livelihood, like they can't handle a big change. You know, but that could be built into the governance system automatically by just, you know, what quorum you need in order to pass a proposal. And that quorum is going to get harder and harder to reach the bigger and bigger it gets, which means it's going to be harder and harder to change it. And you're going to get more and more alignment in order to change it. And as long as you have a high enough quorum, then that means everyone's aware of a decision. So it's not just being enforced upon them. So, you know, there's always governance parameters you can tweak if you want to have a bias towards, you know, move fast and break things, or if you want to have a bias towards conservatism. But, you know, I see that exists on a continuum. Like you start off with a bias towards move fast, break stuff, evolve. Once you figure out your pattern and you start figuring out something that works, cool, solidify it more. But I think always you're going to need to have some way to evolve if it's critical. But for sure, as it matures, make it harder to evolve. Okay. But, you know, if, you know, Bitcoin, if it ran into a critical flaw right now, which it's done several times in the past, it just fractures and breaks in half. And I don't think that's great, because that could harm a lot of people who are dependent on it. And it breaks the community apart, and, you know, it creates a lot of problems as well that don't create that stability. Bitcoin, you know, last bit on Bitcoin, it did great because it was a counteractor. You know, our current US dollar, it's so unstable, no one trusts it. So Bitcoin did the exact opposite. We're not going to change it all. We're going to like counteract it. So like it paired what was happening in the world and created another extreme. Awesome. That's why it's doing well. But I don't think that, you know, a viable alternative is going to be either extreme. It's got to be something that can play in the middle.
And so it's 2:30 now. I'd love to go for another 15 minutes if you guys are good with that.
I mean, we're going deep on this, but this is great. Sure.
I mean, I'm also interested because we talked a little bit just before we started about the Seasteading Institute. That's something I read the book 3 years ago, and the idea was to do artificial islands on international water. And the idea is because on international water, you don't really have laws. So every artificial island could create their own laws, and you'd have a lot of micronation. And that looks a bit like what's happening online in the crypto world, where you have all these projects, and if you don't like a project, you leave and you join a new project. And it looks like, the seasteading could be a bit complicated, that idea of creating artificial island. But what I feel might be coming is this happening on regular land, maybe through special economic zones and maybe certain countries going a certain way. So it ties up to decentralized governance, because I feel there's going to be a lot of experiments. There are a lot of experiments in decentralized governance right now in cryptos online. And I feel it's coming. Do you feel it's coming to land, to communities, to villages also? And how do you use that knowledge of decentralized governance from the crypto world to create almost kind of sovereign nations?
Do you want to start on that, Michael?
Most definitely. So I'm super confident, this decade we're going to end up with, not 190 countries or, 90 fiat currencies. We're going to have, hundreds of millions of currencies and tokens and it's going to be a completely different world. The same way the iPhone came out 10 years.
Also hundreds of thousands of countries?
Of countries, absolutely. And, the idea that, if you're born in France, you get a piece of paper which says, you're French, and it's a label that, if you wanted to be American or Canadian or Japanese or whatever nationality, it's so difficult to be that. The cool thing about tokens is it makes it completely open. It's like, hey, you want to get this token, just buy into it, and it's becoming easier and easier, more friendly, more easy to use. So I really think one thing that these internet nations, these internet states need to move towards though is they need to be collaborative and cooperative rather than thinking of them as rivals. Or so if you think of like the Israeli-Palestinian issue, if the Israelis had a piece of Palestine's tokens and Palestine had Israeli tokens, like two football teams have a stake of each other, they're going to want each other to succeed. So it's kind of like, imagine the three of us had restaurants, and if our main motivation was to make more money for our restaurants, if two of our clients went to your restaurant, we'd be like, hey, it sucks, like let's, burn down his restaurant so the two of us succeed. But if our mission is to feed people, then we're on the same team trying to feed people. If I've got, lots of extra tomatoes or lots of extra.
But going back to land then and decentralized.
So it's just going to become commoditized. So I think, if you look at the world 500 years ago, the United States didn't exist. United Kingdom didn't exist. It was Great Britain. It was so different. And I think not 500 years time in the future, but the next 10 years, we're going to see a completely different shift in the amount of ways that people organize or govern themselves. And I think
will nations let that happen? Because I'm not sure if I say, okay, that island now I want it to be my own country. In the past, it's led to war when people want to make 100%. Their own.
So this is going to make business people and governments way more money. And money is a huge motivator. So I think it's going to become reality. I think one way to think of it is like, you have the Earth dollar, then you've got, continent currencies like United States, China, the European Union with the euro. Then you've got countries like, Indonesia with the rupiah, you've got Japanese like yen, you've got, Mexican peso. You go further, you've got city-states like Singapore, you've got Macau, you've got Hong Kong, you've got then I'm talking a bit further where you've got neighborhoods, you've got towns, you've got people. So I'm really confident it gets way more efficient when it's decentralized and distributed. So even it'll go down to the person level. So, if I want you to be successful, I'm not just going to, help you or support you or give you money or whatever. I'm going to buy a piece of you so that when you become successful, we both benefit.
Even to a point, like let's say right now, if I live in my community, I can't tell the country I'm part of, I don't want to pay your taxes or I don't want to
100%.
follow your rules. You think that's going to change?
Yeah, 100%. Look at Hong Kong, 2 million people, 1/3 of the population went to the street, and nothing much happened. It was kind of like a show. It was very interesting for the media. But then nothing happened. And in my opinion, and how we kind of feel, is money was the key piece. If everyone started selling their Hong Kong dollars, selling their property in Hong Kong, to move into like a new digital Hong Kong token, everyone will be like, oh my gosh, please stop selling. We're going to make a difference. We're going to change. So unfortunately, the blockchain technology isn't ready for that yet.
So basically, you think that the countries now have power because they control the money,
100%.
And with tokens, they won't control the money as much anymore, and so they'll be almost forced, or it will flow that you have those more sovereign communities.
Definitely, and blockchain isn't ready to handle that scale yet. It can't even handle 1 million people using it on a day-to-day basis. So handling 100 million or 1,000 billion is out of the question. But I think what we're seeing now with the blockchain of blockchains, with things like Polygon or Polkadot or Cosmos, this is really exciting because it scales a little bit more. But we're gonna have to see 1,000 Polkadots, like relay chains, and then that's gonna allow these subsystems.
I'll let Rieki react on that.
So one of the members of Hypha, which is one of the DAOs that I work for, he bought up some land in Wyoming and put it on a DAO. So it was one of the first pieces of land to be owned by a decentralized organization that's also set up in Wyoming. So Wyoming just passed in July that you could set up legal entities that are governed wholly by a decentralized organization. And then the legal entity can then own land. So we kind of modeled that when we bought land in Wyoming. What we want to do is use that for villages to be able to get started.
But so that still needs to obey the rules of Wyoming and the US.
Yeah, I think that's going to come with any incumbent. Incumbent businesses change when a startup forces them to change. Banks are finally like reducing their fees right now because crypto kind of forced them. Nation states are going to do the same. Once people can opt out of their system and like they start losing power, for sure, I think they're going to start changing. But they're going to have to get forced to. And in order to force them to, you have to have an alternative that's kicking their butt. So that's what we've got to build first. I think that alternative starts with just private property and special economic zones. So that is happening across the globe. Like in Honduras, they're setting them up, which is exciting. Anyway, so all across, I'm going to see those. Interesting. But I think we don't have to have a special economic zone. You can buy private property, piece of land, and then create your own little village on that private property, where then the land is owned by a foundation or an organization. So it's not owned by an individual anymore. And then everyone who's part of that village owns a bit of that land. So they're all co-owners of this village, right? And then that's going to be like, the base unit as you set up your village. And then there's villages all across the globe. And they say, okay, well, we want to collaborate. Because one, we want to set up more of these villages. We want other people to be able to experience this. And it's a lot easier if 10 of our villages pool, 10% of our surplus to be able to kickstart a new village. So they start federating, to start sharing resources and wisdom and knowledge and tools and everything they're building. They can start, sharing them and collaborating together. And this is what I see like little micronations then forming. Because they're coming together, they're pooling their resources, they're making decisions together. And that's kind of where I see this evolving. And once those get more mature and they become a really strong, viable option, and like you said, people are just wholesale opting out, being like, ditching my dollars, selling my house, moving to a collaborative village. Like once that exodus starts happening and nation states notice, yeah, sure, I think they're going to try to change. But by that point, it'll be too late. And then I think that, slow decay of empire collapse. I have no idea how to predict this, and I'm not interested in what collapse scenario looks like. I'm much more interested on just viable alternatives that we need. But that's the cool part about blockchain is we don't need permission because they can't stop it. And unless they get rid of private ownership of land, which maybe they will do, then we can do this already. We don't need their permission again because we can have private ownership and do what we want on the land. So that's, kind of interesting. I don't know if we need to do seasteading and move to the ocean to do it. Not my cup of tea. I don't want to live on the ocean. But that would be an awesome, really cool place to be able to explore this in more extreme ways where people want to do things that are currently illegal. Because that's where I think that'll be possible. But in places like Honduras, Central America, where the laws are pretty relaxed for everything you want to do anyway, like building and stuff, we're already doing this. And I've been working on this for the last couple of years. My goal is to have 2023 be the year of the initial village offering, where villages are coming together to kickstart and they raise money by selling tokens to, own a share of this village. And this token represents 1 day stay at the village. So you could either buy a day stay or you can come there physically and help build the village and you can earn your tokens. So it'd be a cool way for people to be able to come together, collaborate around building their village. To be able to kickstart fundraising it, really exciting. So this is what we're actually testing all of the tools for, making sure the DAO can own it, and that DAO can issue tokens for it. That creates the incentive for everyone to come and build it and grow it, and then take this model and try to push it out as far as we can once we figure it out. And then, of course, they're using tools to govern that village themselves, make decisions, and sure, they're creating their own token within the village. That makes sense, like their day stay token, but that doesn't help for inter-village connection. Like maybe they use a swap for, I'm going to share these village tokens for this one, and then they start collaborating more. But then, they're going to create tokens that they share together. So different currencies are going to evolve from this. This is where Seeds is kind of figuring itself out as like, we're going to be an inter-community currency. So this is a way for communities to be able to exchange value amongst themselves. In a stable
Which
way.
reconciles then there can be one bigger currencies for inter-community, and then each community can have their currency.
Well, and what I hope is a soon future is that in the village itself, you don't need a fucking token. Sorry for my language, but within the community, it could be a gift economy. Like, if you have your tokens that represent ownership of that village, like if you have that, then things there are just provided for you. And then the community then is paying for things that have a cost. Like maybe you have a gardener providing food, but the food is free, but then the community is paying for that, gardener to grow the food or whatever.
So the access economy.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And that's what I'm really interested in exploring. But, some villages are going to tokenize everything and they're all going to have exchanges. But what I think would be really cool is then for the village models to be doing the more radical level of new economic systems where maybe they're a gratitude-based one, and everyone gets tokens.
And
or
as
whatever.
you said, some do these tokens, some will be like no tokens, and that's also the spirit of these trials. That's what they explain. The seasteading too is the idea of having all these micronation is a bit like in the startup world or in the crypto world to test a lot of different things, replicate what works, improve on what works, ditch what doesn't, and let the flow of it happen.
Well, and then I stopped calling DAOs DAOs. I like calling them programmable organizations. And this is what I think is really interesting, is each one of these villages are using this DO technology, a programmable org. Then they're creating their own little apps for it. So they created an app for, a sharing economy app, which helps people do that a little bit more effectively. Then that starts working. Another village across the globe, they're like, oh, wow, we like that. They can just take that, fork it, add it to their organization. So then we can start collectively learning a lot quicker. If we're using that shared, code base as a foundation, because then it's just a plug and play across the whole ecosystem, right?
All open source.
Yeah, exactly. All open source, all compatible, so that's interoperable. Like right now with eco villages, they all kind of started from scratch, created their own entire operating system. If you show up to that village from another, it's an entirely different world, and it takes a while to actually understand what's going on there. If they come up with some like really revelatory new way of doing things, it's not very easy to port it over to a new village. So we've kind of isolated our experiments. We're not able to collectively learn. But what I think is really cool is if we bring our, governance systems into a programmable org, as we get better at it, as we're learning new tools, then we can, port it across and people can learn collectively. So that we're still like, inhabiting communities locally, but we're still collaborating and growing and interacting globally, right? So that's the global kind of concept. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah. I love the name Local. I'll let Michael react on that, and then we'll finish, because otherwise we'll be here for the next four hours.
So I've been super interested and invested and involved in building village projects the past few years. And the biggest takeaway I've come out from that and my time in the crypto space is you can't tie a real world asset to a digital token without trusting someone. So you need to trust someone. So it's kind of like, if you've got a piece of land and we bought some of your land's token, we need to trust you that, this land is tied to the token. The only way that, you mentioned about governments taking away land from people, the only thing that people can hold without trusting anyone is crypto and tokens. It's the only thing. You can talk about money in your bank account, you can talk about shares, you can talk about stock, you can talk about anything. The only asset that people can hold is crypto in a way where you don't trust anyone. And I guess why this is so interesting is because what we do at Unit is if you build a token for your land-based project, if your village is making people happy, it's it's creating a lot of value and people are enjoying it, then you're gonna have a surplus of value, and this will allow you to put funds into your treasury. And the treasury allows people to go and invest or support different village-based projects which are successful. If let's say you're in charge of a village and you're just, badly managing the money, you're overpaying for material, you're continually, things are falling apart, your treasury is just not going to grow, which means that, your token as a indicator of the success of your village is not going to thrive. So we think that, the same way internet companies, they're not that complicated in the sense that, if you go to different websites, you click different buttons, you watch videos, you look at pictures, you learn. It's kind of the same experience. Mobile apps, quite similar experience overall. Tokens at the moment, there's so many different blockchains, there's so many different cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, decentralized organization, DAOs, whatever. We think it's going to become quite simple in the future, where it's like, Alex, you've got a token, Rieki's got a token, I've got a token, he's got a token, whoever. And you can just look at the token and go, okay, how well is this token doing? Is it generating a lot of products and services to grow its treasury? If it's not, then okay, the treasury is not growing. I'm going to support it because I love the artists, I love what they do. But I know I'm doing it knowing that if nobody buys more of the token in the future, it could just run out of money. So I grew up in, final point, I grew up in Singapore where, or like another example is Saudi Arabia, where, they literally have money coming out from the ground in Saudi Arabia, oil. Singapore, it's a huge business hub. There's a lot of money, and it's grown from Singapore, a small fishing village 70 years ago, to the richest, most economically developed place in the world. And how it's done that is through an extremely capitalistic model, where if businesses do well, they make a lot of money, it allows everyone to thrive. So I think, how we get there is creating opportunity for people to be a capitalist, to be an entrepreneur, to create, to fail, to try again, to fail, to try again and succeed. And then it's going to allow everyone to benefit and thrive. And we're close to getting there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, guys. I think it was a
much.
really cool discussion.
Yeah, no, really
we covered a lot,
so
and we could have covered so much more, of course, but time. So, Michael, you're doing Unit. I think you're close to raising more funds and going live also for projects. I know with the Lightleaders, we're really interested in looking into creating our token through Unit, essentially. And Rieki, you're still quite involved with Seeds, but also with Hypha, that creates decentralized governance tools. So, is there anything you guys want to share to close this episode?
So I guess in terms of Unit's the simplest, easiest, most advanced token builder. So, whether you run a community, a village, an organization, a business, a person, you can create a token. This allows your friends, your families, your supporters to buy into it, and then allows everyone to be supporting one another. And contrary to most cryptocurrencies or tokens, where there's no way of evaluating how well it's doing, we have this thing called treasury, where when a project provides lots of products and services, it fills up this treasury. And the treasury is held in digital assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, Kusama, Matic, Link, BNB. And these assets are deflationary assets. So over time, they become worth more as each of these internet nations and ecosystems grow. So, people don't have to worry about, something like Apple with $200 billion.
And Michael, we have 2 episodes already where we talk about Unit. So
and if there's any help or support, please feel free to reach out. And
thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Sure, a plug for the stuff that I'm playing on. Seeds it's a new economic system for trying to create a regenerative civilization. It's very experimental. Everyone who's participating in it's a deep rabbit hole of crazy, wild, intense discussions, and it's awesome. So that's a place that's trying to rethink what economic and governance systems could be about. So if Seeds is a new type of economic system, something that might replace, capitalism or socialism or whatever, all the rest of the isms. Hypha is the organization I'm actually working for. So Seeds is contracted Hypha to build stuff for Seeds. So I don't own Seeds by any stretch of the imagination. Then Hypha is building collaboration and organization and governance tools. So if it's organizations that want to come together, figure out how do we make decisions, how do we pay each other, how do we do pie splitting for owning the endeavor that we're working on together. This is what Hypha has been working on, building tools to sort out. So that's why Hypha is wanting to build it for villages that are wanting to come together and do governance and decide how to separate ownership of the village and all of that. But for anything, any organization or group that's coming together to do stuff together could use, Hypha toolset to be able to do it without having to, go through the legal entity process if you don't want to. For Hypha, the last 4 years, we've been using that to build a software company to build tools. Never had a legal entity, never had a bank account. We've distributed north of $4 million worth of fiat value, way more worth of paper value of ownership of Hypha, but we don't actually say that token's worth anything yet. But it's been fun. It's just a weird, wild experiment of how you can exist totally in the Web3 world without.
And if people want to learn more, so the website of Unit?
So unit.foundation or unitmasters.org is our master's program where we teach people a lot about tokens and the digital economy. Unit.network is our platform.
And for Seeds and
the master's network and all that ecosystem is awesome. So definitely go check that out.
Cheers.
You could go to hypha.earth if you want to see about Hypha, or joinseeds.earth if you want to see about Seeds.
Thank you, Rieki. Thank you, Michael. I know you're also part of the Lightleaders Mastermind, and you've been giving a lot to our Mastermind community.
The last Mastermind was epic. Well played.
It was nice. We'll miss you. We'll have another one in December in Bali.
Well, whenever you come to Costa Rica to do it, let me
I'd
know.
love to, or you could organize one in Costa Rica.
I like that plan even better.
We have a few people in Costa Rica. Anyway, thank you so much, Rieki.
Cheers,
thank you, Michael. Sending much love to everyone who listened to. Thank you for taking some of your precious time to listen to this podcast. If you stayed until the end, I assume it was insightful. So if you like this podcast, please share with friends. Remember that if you tag us in your Instagram story at the Lightleaders podcast, we will repost. Tell us what you've learned. You can also leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Now, if you want to stay posted about new podcast releases, especially as we get censored more and more on big tech platforms, make sure to join our newsletter and our Telegram. You'll find the links on thelightleaders.org, and feel free to contact me directly too, whether it's for feedback or potential collaborations. Thank you again, and let's co-create the conscious new earth together.